Another subject that the mainstream media doesn't feel it needs to cover is the mass amount of flooding that has taken place across the entire world. Already tens of thousands of people have been displaced or are missing, and thousands of people are already dead. In numerous countries there have been multiple floodings which have cost people lives, but apparently the mainstream media just feels that this is something that is not to be covered. 1. Places like Greece, Turkey, Libya, Brazil, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Spain, and even, at home in the US, Las Vegas. Right now in Greece, the Thessalian plains have been absolutely flooded to the point where 70,000 hectares of land are now underwater. Over in Turkey, flooding has destroyed several small towns. This here is footage of a group of people trapped by flooding in the National Library of Istanbul. Storm Daniel has also struck Libya, the country with the open-air slave markets, because the U.S. invaded it because Gaddafi wouldn't be an economic puppet of the U.S. The city of Derna in East Libya took on flash flooding, leading to a mass casualty event. In Hong Kong, heavy rainfall, some of the largest on record, flooded entire subway stations and cities. At least 2 people were killed. Hundreds have been hospitalized. In the Shanghai province of China, 4 inches of rain fell in just 45 minutes. Shanghai Pudong received 105 millimeters of rainfall in 45 minutes. Xi'an, located inland northwest, also experienced 64 millimeters of rainfall in 1 hour. At least 39 people have been killed in Brazil by flooding in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Heavy flooding in Spain has killed 1 man who became trapped in an elevator. 5 others have also been reportedly killed. Meanwhile, in the U.S., flooding continues. National media coverage? Hardly any. Monsoon rains brought major flash flooding to parts of Las Vegas. The city's drainage system has been completely overwhelmed. We are literally looking at the entire planet going through the chaos that is global warming, with the planet dying. Climate change is a very real threat that is unfolding right before our very eyes and killing thousands of people. And considering those who have already died, it's more like tens of thousands of people who have already died. Flooding continues to get worse year by year. The temperature is going up year by year. Yet there are astronomical amounts of people who continue to deny that this is actually happening. They deny what 97% of climate scientists say is actually very real, and something that is being made tremendously worse by the activities of man, and mostly industrial pollution. Industrial pollution that doesn't need to happen because we already have the technology necessary to avoid this entire problem, but we won't use those solutions because they're not profitable. And if they're not profitable, then they're not fit for capitalism. What's frightening here is not just that we're not using the technology because it's not profitable enough for those who make money off of oil and other forms of fossil fuels, etc. But the people who continue to deny the very reality of what is right in front of their face because they have some kind of conspiracy theory type thinking. So it's odd that global warming is allegedly a conspiracy because the demons are trying to trick us. So the very real floods that are killing thousands of people, mostly in the third world, because that's the way it works, isn't real. But the demons that nobody has evidence actually exists are the ones behind trying to trick us. I don't know what. Usually if you press them hard enough for an answer, they turn towards something about a global homo conspiracy to turn everybody gay or some complete utter anti-materialist nonsense just like that, while running around claiming to be a part of a materialist ideology. It's utterly astounding that the mainstream media, who you'd think they would have a vested interest in not dying, would bother to report these things. I mean, as bad as capitalism actually is, there are people within the bourgeoisie who don't want to die. And that's why they try to do something about global warming, even if it's useless reform within the system itself. Now, the mainstream media generally is filled with people who don't want to die. They may be lying, psychotic scumbags, but they do have a self-interest in not being killed by the entire planet dying, yet they're continuing to refuse to report this. Is it possibly because if you report anything on global warming, all of a sudden you're a conspiracy theorist and people turn off the television and you lose ad revenue? That could be one possible explanation why the mainstream media is looking the other way. Or maybe the entire Hunter Biden story is much more important than this. Or maybe the trials and the charges against Trump just need to take up so much time that there's no time to report any of this. Of course, the trials of Trump are actually very important, particularly to the U.S. political landscape. Even though it doesn't actually fundamentally change anything, and the system will still be the system regardless of whether or not he gets convicted. But you'd think they could devote at least maybe a half an hour out of a 24-hour news day to talk about the thing that's killing the entire planet and possibly report these events that are taking place, but they're not. Now, I can't speak for any media in any other country. I can only say for Canada and the United States, which makes the vast majority of the media that I consume, and they're not really mentioning it. Now, Canada's a little bit better. They're at least mentioning it to some degree, but not nearly enough, because there were too many conspiracy nuts running around threatening to kill politicians because they believe global warming is a complete hoax to force them to eat bugs, because somehow that makes sense in their minds, even though nobody's trying to make them eat bugs. One guy suggested a possible alternative one time, so therefore it means it's a massive worldwide conspiracy against them, because they lack the basic critical thinking skills to understand the difference between something that exists and something that does not exist. Out of all the apocalyptic scenarios that have existed throughout mankind, from the we're going to blow ourselves up in the Cold War to wars that were going to completely destroy us in World War II, or the demons were going to come back and God was going to kill us all with dragons like in the Bible or whatnot. The scenario that was considered the least was human stupidity. The fact that we could be driving so quickly towards a cliff and have what is essentially a huge section of the population refuse to admit that the cliff even exists. Now, it makes some sense that the bourgeoisie would be ideologically invested in pretending global warming doesn't exist. That way they can justify continuing extracting billions, not trillions of dollars out of the economy for their own self-interest. Which, by the way, is the only way the world could possibly function. Because if you didn't have self-interest, then literally nothing would exist. Ever. But also, real capitalism's never been tried at the same time. But those who are regular, everyday people, who it's in their interest not to die from global warming, or killing off the entire planet, or destroying the entire thing for their own future generations of their family, which they're literally not capable of seeing past, or even seeing, in this case, are still continuing to deny the reality of what is right in front of us. And the only real question is, how long is society going to let these people be a problem? That's something I can't answer. That's something society has to answer. When is anything going to get done? Because I can tell you this. Capitalism will not do a goddamn thing about global warming until it's too late. Because then it'll have to do something. And until then, it doesn't really have to do anything. Because that's what the market dictates to it. So in the meantime, we have to put up with idiot after idiot running around with conspiracy theories, thinking this is all some kind of plot by the Satanists to make them gay or something. And you know who you are. But that's the reality that we find ourselves in. And sometimes you question if this is even reality, if reality can even be this bad or this dumb. But unfortunately it is. And that's the objective situation that we find ourselves in. A media that isn't reporting all of these devastations because they're afraid for their budgets, they're afraid for their revenue. They're afraid that it's not going to make as much money as covering the Trump trial, etc. And meanwhile, the planet continues to burn. But what does it matter? It's just third world people dying from it, right? It's not like they've ever really mattered. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.